If the idea of being your own boss thrills you and terrifies you, you're going to want to watch this video. I felt the same way, and even though it was the best decision I ever made, there were some things I know now that would have saved me a lot of pain in the process. Keep watching for the highs and lows and what you should know before starting on this journey yourself. First, one of the greatest things I did was grow someone else's business. It was really powerful starting in outside sales, going into management, and then regional management, executive management, and becoming president of a $20 million company. I know not everyone gets that luxury. I'll say this, most of us work for someone else before we start our own business. And it's important to think about all the experience you receive from working for somebody else. That is invaluable. When I look back at growing the tech company, it was like getting an MBA on steroids. I learned how to sell. I learned how to create a revenue model. I learned how to create a sales pipeline. I learned how to market. I learned HR. I learned all of the pieces that I didn't know I wanted to know and that what I would need to know someday. Because I didn't start out working for someone else thinking I'd even have my own business someday. In fact, I didn't have that thought until much later in life that this was going to be my next move. So it was always just, with good intentions, I was growing someone else's business and I learned a lot. So always value all the places you've worked and the experience that you received from doing that. Second, I became my own boss by getting really good at selling. For a lot of people, sales is a 4-letter word. It's like saying I'm fine, right? People don't want to know how to sell. They don't want to learn how to sell. No one wants to feel salesy or pushy. And it's the place I get the most feedback. It is the reason I started my first company around the idea of selling, because I realized that most entrepreneurs didn't like to sell. I was lucky, I guess, because I started my career in outside sales. I learned how to sell first, and it has served me throughout my entire career. But I recognize that not everybody has that luxury. If you don't come from a sales background, it's still an area that you want to get good at. And it's important to remember that we're not born knowing how to sell. No one's born knowing how to sell. We're not taught how to sell in preschool or elementary school or high school or even college. You could even get an MBA and never have a class just on selling. A lot of you are like, no, that's not possible. It is possible. Look it up. You might have a lot of classes on marketing if you get an MBA, but not a lot on how to close a sale. And so it's a place that you really need to educate yourself. The good news is that there are tons and tons of books on sales and selling, from one of my favorites, Brian Tracy's The Psychology of Selling. Jeffrey Gitomer wrote The Sales Bible. Those are two of my favorites. I wrote a book called Selling with Intention, which is very simple and to the point and demystifies selling. So wherever you're feeling stuck in the sales process, I just want to remind you that that's very normal. Nobody knows how to sell. No one's born knowing how to sell. And it's important to get those skills to help you grow your business. And even if you don't want to be the person who's always selling, I get that, right? You're leading the company. You still have to know how to sell your own products or services to teach someone else how to do it. When I wanted to become my own boss, the third thing I realized is that if I could run someone else's business, I could run my own business. And this goes back to the incredible experience I got at the tech company. Again, it wasn't my plan to, I'm going to learn all the things and then I'm going to go start my own company. But it was, when I look back, it was incredible experience. And it was a great confidence builder, knowing that I could not only run like a local branch of the business, I could also run the entire company. And I got experience at every level. And so once you've done that, once you've taken classes on selling, once you've worked for somebody else, and especially if you can work for someone else in a similar industry, it's like that's going to give you so much incredible knowledge and experience and confidence that you can run your own company as well. If you don't have that luxury, like if you're not able to run someone else's business, that's okay. A lot of people don't have that opportunity. But then it's like, well, how can I get some of that experience? And sometimes, so that could mean being mentored by someone in your industry, right? Finding someone who's ahead of you. Or I love organizations like SCORE, where they have retired executives who will mentor you for free and really help you grow your business as well. I eventually launched my own business, became my own boss, because I realized that I loved teaching others how to sell. I started out in the world in outside sales, and grew my territory very quickly, so quickly that I was approached after 8 months to take on leading my own branch. I was a selling branch manager, but I was still involved in the sales piece, and I was still leading. And then I was promoted again to go to California and take on a branch there. Again, while I was branch manager, I was still selling. I always called myself a selling branch manager. I never wanted to stop selling because it's like I didn't want to lose that edge, because knowing how to sell and being close to the sales cycle allowed me to lead my sales professionals in a way that kept them engaged and motivated as well. So when I was leading them, it was never like, oh, Ursula, you've never done this, or you're not doing it. It's like, no, I'm still talking to clients. I just had a smaller group of clients that I was talking to at the time because of time constraints, but I always kept my sales skills fresh, which allowed me to be a better sales leader and allowed me to be a better leader overall. And over time, I realized more and more how much I loved teaching and leading salespeople, helping them, double, triple, quadruple their sales. I can remember helping sales professionals in the tech field go from making $50,000 a year, like they would come to our company, they were making $50,000 a year somewhere else, to one of them making $500,000 in 1 year. Our salespeople were not capped at the time, so they could make as much money as was possible for them. And I remember this trajectory. I had several salespeople who were making, $400,000, $500,000 a year. They're just blowing their numbers out of the water. And it was so gratifying to see how that changed their lives. And that's what eventually inspired me to start my own sales training and coaching company. So I loved it so much, and I knew if I could do it with salespeople, I could do it with entrepreneurs as well. So after that, after I launched my first sales coaching and training company, I really never looked back and started to enjoy being my own boss. And I can tell you, I could never say never, but I could never work for someone again. I don't think I could ever work for someone again. I would start a different company. If I couldn't do this company, I would start a different company, because I have this my brain just works in a certain way. And if this resonates with you, I'd love for you to share it in the comments below. But you just know you have to be leading, you have to be creating, you have to be growing a company. There's nothing else you can be doing. And that's when you have to be your own boss. That's when you know that you have to have your own company. And finally, one of the things I realized is that having your own business is more than leading a team. It's more than growing your revenue. It's more than making an impact on your clients and customers. It's your company, your journey, what you're creating must also align with your values. And that was one of the big lessons too, is that I realized that there were certain companies that I couldn't work for anymore, even if I had the opportunity to, because they weren't aligned with my values. When I left this company, I had an opportunity that someone offered to me, and the pay was incredible. It was great pay. It was a great opportunity. But when I went to meet with them, it was just this red flag went off for me. And I thought, our values are so different. And I could see myself, I could get the job. I could have said yes, and I would have been so miserable. And that was a sign for me as well that it was time to just go out and it's time for me to start my own company. It was one of the things that kind of gave me the push. The real push to start my own company came from a recruiter. So I remember I was working with this recruiter, and I think every time I walked in the door, he saw dollar signs, right? He saw how much money he would be paid when he placed me at a company, because it was six-figure deal is what he was trying to get me. And so that was a pretty big commission for him. And he kept presenting these opportunities. It was the one opportunity where I went down. I was totally not in alignment with my values. And I just kept saying no. I kept saying no. And I was frustrating him so much, because I kept saying to him, I want to be the president of the next company. He kept saying, you're 27 years old. You don't have the experience. Maybe he thought I was too female. I don't know. But I could just see in his eyes, he just was like, you're not going to be the president of the next company. You're going to have to start at a certain level and work your way up, which I didn't live in that world. I didn't think that was true. And I kind of pushed back on him and said, but you're not even trying to place me as the president of the next company. And all of a sudden I could just tell he was so frustrated with me. He just looked at me. He's like, and I think this was his takeaway close. He's like, why don't you just start your own company then? Because he expected me to say, no, I don't want to start my own company. I'm just going to take whatever you give me. And I was speechless for a moment. And I remember looking at him and thinking, yeah, why don't I start my own company? And I went home that day, totally frustrated with this experience, but also kind of excited. And I sat down with my husband. I was like, why don't I start my own company? And my husband was like, I've been saying that to you for years. And so I went ahead then and launched my own company. So it was fun sharing the story of how I became my own boss and what has evolved over the years. Stick with me because up next, we're going to talk about my 5 best secrets to grow your business. And remember, your 2X is waiting for you too.